Bringing on Josh now. How's it going, Josh?
Hey, doing well. Great to be with you.
Thanks for coming on. I know it's a little bit tricky today without Dave, but he's got a much needed vacation in LA.
Uh, Tricky, but not necessarily worse without Dave. So yeah, we'll have some fun. We have a lot to talk about.
Yes, we definitely do. Josh, I wanted you to jump in. I don't know if you heard the conversation I was having earlier beforehand. Who do you think will be a bigger breakout star this year, Dylan Sampson or Brew McCoy for Tennessee?
I'll say Sampson from a breakout standpoint. I think Brew will have a bigger role and will have a chance to enhance some of his numbers, both up and down the field and then perhaps in the red zone. But I think Dylan Sampson has a chance to go from a guy that would be counted on at times, but really sparingly over his freshman season, to playing an important role within the offense. And he showed what his ability was as a freshman. Think about that Missouri game where he had some big runs in the second half when Missouri's trying to come back and turn it into a football game to close things out toward the fourth quarter. And then Sampson hit a couple of big runs. They had some big plays. They had the long touchdown pass with the trickeration to Jalen Hyatt, and that was it. But Sampson's runs were a big deal there, and you could see his burst, his speed, his playmaking ability within this offense. But he still had a lot to learn. He had trust to earn from Tennessee's coaching staff, and what we've heard during the spring, I think, indicates that he will play a bigger role. So I think he has a chance to break out in terms of his role, numbers that he will put up, big yardage plays, and scoring for Tennessee. So Sampson is a player to watch absolutely within this offense. Brew McCoy can kind of help lead the group of receivers, but I don't know that he'll break out much greater than what he was able to do last year.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. I was thinking that Brew probably is a better, I guess, if you were to say NFL prospect, is probably the best on the offense. But it just seems like the system allows for Sampson to pick up a lot more yards. Dare we invoke the name Alvin Kamara with him?
Yeah, I'm always hesitant because of how special Alvin is as a talent, but Sampson has the ability to, I think, change games with his playmaking ability. There are several uh, big play guys in this offense. Squirrel White's going to have that opportunity. Dante Thornton is a newcomer, a transfer from Oregon, can do that. And then Dylan Sampson can hit the home run. I just, is he going to have a Texas A&M game this season as Alvin did in 2016? That's a big ask. Also, Jabari Small and Jalen Wright are not going to be counted out in the offense, and somebody else, Cameron Seldon could play a role at running back. Deshaun Bishop has gotten a lot of spring attention, but I don't know that that's going to translate to the field this fall for him as a true freshman. But Sampson will play an important role, and his playmaking ability, and we'll see if he's involved in the passing game, because that's what I think about with Alvin. Alvin was such a good receiver and has been for the New Orleans Saints. But in terms of quickness, burst of speed, explosive playmaking ability, Sampson ranks very high on the list of skill players in this offense for Tennessee.
Got a lot of questions on the message board about, looks like one of the aspects of the debate is about returning kicks. Do you think Dylan Sampson might be the kickoff returner for Tennessee this year?
He could be in that role. We saw that from the orange and white game. I think Seldon is a player that should have an opportunity in that role. He's been limited this spring, but Seldon is a player, Cameron Seldon, a true freshman who could play running back or receiver on offense, and with his speed would be a natural fit as a kick return guy. But Sampson absolutely should get some consideration there. D. Williams can be an option, but he's the punt returner. Do you want him doing both? That's something the coaching staff would have to figure out. But Sampson, to me, would want to be he would be one of the top 2 to 3 contenders for that role if I'm Tennessee's coaching staff.
Seems to me like there's a lot of more even than last year or the year before. It seems like they're going all in a little more on speed this year. Between, you talked about Dylan Sampson, and we both agree. I think I've come to your side. I've taken the L. Looks like Squirrel White's going to be the slot guy over Dante Thornton based on what we've seen in the spring. So it seems like they're going a lot more on speed this year than in the past.
Yeah, and Thornton has really good speed. He's a deep threat, averaged 21.5 yards per catch at Oregon. He's a bigger guy, obviously, at 6'5" compared to Squirrel White, who's one of the smaller guys that will be out there. But with Squirrel, with Sampson, with Seldon coming in, Seldon is just one of those guys where it shows up on tape and you do wonder about the competition, but then you look at him out on the track as well, and you can realize, okay, he can run. And at that size, you just don't find that very often. So I think on both sides of the ball, on offense and then also in the secondary, and a linebacker, somebody like Arion Carter in this offense and Jalen Smith coming in at linebacker. They wanted to upgrade the speed across the board. Every coach wants it, but there might be more opportunities to utilize that on the field together this fall because, again, last year there was still a lack of trust in Sampson because of pass protection development. And then Squirrel was still just a freshman who had a lot to learn himself. This year, he'll be more developed. Same with Sampson. Thornton coming in. We'll see Squirrel and Thornton on the field together, I have to imagine, at least this upcoming fall. Brew and Mel Keaton are not going to be highlighted for their blazing speed compared to these other guys, but Brew is a good athlete, big physical receiver, and Keaton is not a bad one either. So I just think across the board, Tennessee has recruited well, and that includes the transfer portal to upgrade what they needed, and that's more speed. In the SEC, you need as much as you can find.
Yeah, Mr. Jones brings up the great catch Brew had to set up the Alabama win, and also said Travis added best catch of the season in any game. And Mr. Jones also adds he thinks Mel Keaton will have a good year. And I wanted to bring that up because I know you mentioned him.
Yeah.
Do you think there's an odd man out, or do you think there's enough balls to go around with the yards they put up? Could Keaton be left out with this new rotation?
Yeah, I'd be surprised. He's kind of forgotten in the conversation because, especially this time of year, it's so common to talk about who's next or who's the newcomer, which I've talked about a lot here. But don't forget Keaton and how he stepped into a starting role when Cedric Tillman went down last year and produced. When we think about big plays last year, we think about Jalen Hyatt most likely. Tillman has done some of that the last couple of years for sure, not being a blazing speed guy. Keaton's catch down the right sideline against Florida before halftime last season was a huge play for Tennessee. That set up a touchdown throw to Brew McCoy, who made a great play in the end zone. And that turned the game around in Tennessee's direction. They scored before the half, then carried it over into the second half and gave Tennessee a big enough lead to be able to hold on late against Florida. If Keaton doesn't make that catch, it's a different conversation going into half. There's a little more pressure on the Vols in the second half and just a closer margin as the second half plays out for Florida to manage. So that Keaton play and several plays that he made during the season, catch and run ability that he showed. I think Keaton, with that experience and his ability to continue developing, will allow him to play an even bigger role potentially in the offense. It's easy to see a guy and understand what he's been and then kind of assume, okay, that's it for him, and discount his ability to continue to develop. And I think Keaton has a chance to be that. He knows that Squirrel is going to be an exciting player to pay attention to, and he might lead the team in receptions or total yards, but all these guys will play an important role. Unless there's injury, there won't be a deep rotation of receivers. Pretty confident there based on what we've seen the last couple of years. But the top four, I think, are in no particular order: McCoy, Keaton, Squirrel, and Dante Thornton.
Yeah, and adding on to that, we have a question from Mr. Jones. What about Nathan Laycock? Do you think he could somehow work his way into the rotation? I've heard some things about him this spring, but I don't know if you know any more.
Yeah, I think they're really excited about Laycock, who is a well thought of recruit. He surged during his senior season in high school and improved in recruiting rankings. On3 moved him up into maybe the top 50 in the 40s, I believe. And they were really high on what he did and will be at Tennessee. But this would be an example of where we sometimes need to pump the brakes as well on freshman expectations when we talk about Tennessee's group of receivers and how short they've been in the rotation in the past. One reason that Walker Merrill, Jimmy Holiday, and Jimmy Callaway left is because it was difficult to get on the field because they didn't go that deep at receiver. And Keaton didn't play much until Tillman went out. And then Tillman went out and it became Keaton's opportunity. So I wouldn't rule out seeing Laycock play an important role. I'm just skeptical knowing the experience they have ahead of him and how short the rotation has been the last two seasons in this offense. But the future for Laycock, I think, is very bright.